I was going to introduce you all to the VGOT Framework. So VGOT stands for Very Good Online Teaching. And this is a series of expectations, best practices, and other recommendations for online or digital classrooms that was created and used by the Montana Digital Academy, which is an online school that takes place in the state of Montana. The idea behind the VGOT is to create these standards and expectations so that all teachers that are teaching in this setting are creating a responsive, flexible, and student-driven environment for their students to succeed and do well while taking these online classes. It also puts a lot of emphasis on what the teacher themselves should be looking at within each of the standards and how their actions impact the course as a whole. So when we look at the standards, it's the VGOT is broken into 6 categories. The first standard is presence. And so when we talk about presence, really there's this idea that the teachers need to be engaged, whether it's an asynchronous or synchronous course. And during that engagement, they need to have a presence with the students. And so one of the main ways that the Montana Digital Academy stresses this is using video presence. And so just like the video I'm creating here, the idea would be putting a face into the classroom as the instructor. And so teachers really need to have some form of presence. This also can be a presence through messaging and things, and that'll go into the next standard a little bit. Now the reason for this is the idea is that any student that's taking an online class should feel like the teacher is only one click or one email or one call away. And I think that really is the key with the presence, is by the teacher reaching out, creating a video presence or a presence through email or phone calls. We show the student that we're here and that they have someone on the other end that's going to be there to respond. The second standard that the VGOT looks at is communication. And so, as I mentioned earlier, it's really about the teacher creating, building on that presence that they have, but also making sure that the communication is done with what we like to call an online smile. And the reason for this is a lot is lost when we are sending text communication back and forth. There's a lot of nuance in our language and body language that is not picked up by our students, and so making sure that our communication is done in a professional manner and that it's always positive and upbeat is really important. The main thing here is that students, when they take an online class, they typically are super apprehensive at the start, and they're really nervous. And for many of them, the teachers feel, either non-existent or really far away. And so by being positive in our communication, staying upbeat, really working on those pieces, that allows the student to feel like there is a teacher there. And really, as I mentioned before, the presence and communication are really working hand in hand here. As we want those students to feel welcome, we want them to feel comfortable, and we want them to know that there's someone else, on the other side of the internet that is there to help them, and that they can feel comfortable asking questions too. And so setting a positive tone through that communication and making the communication consistent is really important. The frequency really does matter. The third standard that it talks about is course design. And there's a lot of different little aspects to course design, and it really depends on the platform that you're using, whether that's Google Classroom or Moodle or maybe Seesaw. There's a lot of different platforms out there, but the key with course design is that it needs to be a set of norms that you're going to follow over and over again. You need to have set due dates. You need to be really consistent with those due dates and what you're doing in the classroom. So those are the first 3 standards of the VGOT. Hello, so now we're back for part 2 and looking at the last 3 standards for the VGOT. So again, the VGOT is the Very Good Online Teaching framework that was created and is used by the Montana Digital Academy in order to set those guidelines for online teachers and just so that there's a clear set of expectations for them and what works best in their classroom, in that online classroom, and how that helps their students, and really focusing on how their students feel. The next three standards look at first curriculum, and when we're talking about curriculum, depending on the program that you might be using for online teaching, maybe you don't have a lot of choice about the curriculum. But if you are in a position to have some say in the curriculum, you want to really strive to make sure that that curriculum is fitting and meeting all of your local school district standards, that you're looking for curriculum that's following Common Core, and really still using the best practices that we'd expect to use in our classroom. We want to see those types of activities and lessons carry over onto the online setting. And so that's really what curriculum is about, in making sure that you're meeting all of those standards so that your students are still getting the full gamut and expectations that we would expect in a face-to-face class. The next one, and really the most important probably standard, is assessment, because this is where we're going to build that communication feedback loop with our students. Assessment, as many of us know in our face-to-face classes, really drives how teachers make decisions on what to do in the next unit, or how or when to go back over material. And we really need to think of the online classroom in that same context. And so when we are looking at assessment, really it's about the types of feedback that you provide your students. In an online setting, it needs to be really even more so timely. And not only does it need to be timely, it needs to be individualized for each student. And so if you have a written assignment, you need to provide individualized feedback to them. And there's a lot of research out there saying that video feedback is really a useful way to make it more individualized, and again provide that presence from the teacher's perspective. But either way, whatever format you're using, it's good to kind of mix it up, but make sure that it's timely, that it's happening immediately, and making sure that the students know what the expectations were before you start assessing certain pieces, especially if they're pieces that you're going to be inserting in the grade book or using to hold them accountable on their end for their grade. And so just like in the classroom, you can still design formative and summative assessments, and they can look a little bit different, and you might be trying out some new things with an online classroom that are a little different. But the ultimate key to this section and to this standard is creating that feedback loop, making sure that there's communication back and forth from the student to the instructor, and really making sure that there's that understanding of what was expected and how they're doing on reaching those expectations. And so for me, and I think a lot of the research out there would state that this is kind of the key to building a successful online course. The final component and standard of the VGOT is the professional development piece. And really, we know that teaching online is a different environment than a face-to-face classroom. Whether you're teaching online synchronously or asynchronously, we know that it's different. And because it's different, we need to have different professional development. And so continuing to look for professional development opportunities within the Montana Digital Academy, they provide those opportunities. But at a standalone school district, you might need to go and find those for yourself. But really thinking about it as a different form of teaching than the face-to-face classroom. And so we need different types of professional development to make that happen. So now that you've kind of gone through the background of the 6 standards, really go through the VGOT and take a look at some of the other material that is that's available through the Montana Digital Academy. Do note that some of that material is just for Montana Digital Academy staff, so it might not pertain to your situation, but it should still give you a good framework to kind of think about as you're building online classes and teaching more in the online arena. Thanks.